I've realized that I've had a lot of videos talking about why loving yourself is important or that you should be loving yourself, but I've never actually given, what I think it means to actually love yourself. What I think it means when people are asking, okay, well, if I should love myself now, what does that look like? And I think this is exactly what I feel like I could have better explained and what I should be explaining, because I truly do feel like loving yourself means more than giving yourself affirmations or taking yourself on dates or whatever that thing may be that a lot of people will say on the internet. A lot of people will tell you, spend time with yourself, pour that love that you're pouring into other people into you. And it is great advice, and it definitely will help you love yourself. But what I want is for people to love themselves long term, for people to love themselves without this feeling that they always have to do this thing, always have to pour something on themselves so that they can love themselves. It's just something uncontrollable that they can love themselves. There's love within themselves, there's love around themselves, and they don't have to do anything more. You don't have to go out of your way, you don't have to change anything about who you are, what you do. It's just loving yourself. And I think if we really want to look at, what that means, it has so much more depth and emotion than just these, little tidbits of information like, hey, do this and do that, and you will love yourself. I think truly loving yourself is acceptance above all else. It's accepting not only who you are now, but who you were in the past. And I don't think it's possible to really heal, to really love yourself without having that feeling of forgiveness, without being able to forgive yourself for the many mistakes that you've made in the past. A lot of times we try to ignore that part of our life. Make sure you forgive yourself before trying to forgive other people, because it's only going to be so much harder if you're trying to heal from these things and you're letting people from your past or people in your present destroy that. That will only lead into your future. You have to be able to heal and forgive yourself so that way you can move on with an open heart. You can move on without any stress or anything holding you back. You have this idea now that whatever happens in the future, you are still capable of handling. You are still capable of being able to control the controllable. And when you're trying to have better relationships, when you're trying to have better connections, and you allow, these scars from your past to kind of transfer into your future and damage the relationships that you have now, it's only going to be harder. How are you able to give someone your full heart if it's still broken? You wouldn't give that to someone. You wouldn't want someone to have that in their grasp, knowing how fragile it is, knowing how dangerous it could be in another person's hands. You have to restore that yourself. You can't look for this person to heal you. You can't look for someone to come save you. When it comes to healing yourself, that is your priority. That is your job. That is something that you have to do. And so many people have this idea that, they can find this healing, or that there's someone, miraculously out there that will come and show them what real love is. And yeah, that can happen, but I don't think it's something you should depend on. When I do say forgive yourself, it means a lot more than accepting, what has happened. But I truly feel like it's being content. And I've made videos about being content, being satisfied, being happy, and in all of that, being content, I feel is being okay. You're not always going to be ecstatic. You're not always going to have the best, biggest smile in the world on your face and happy about whatever is going on. But I think when you are able to be okay with what's going on, to understand that the things around you won't always be there, or that something might change, or that people might hurt you, but being okay with it and knowing that you are able to handle it, that is what you need. That's something that people aren't trying to have. So when it is coming to, forgiveness or whatever, that thing may be, it brings a lot of weight. It comes a lot with who you want and overall what you want. And I think when we are talking about, healing and moving on, this is something we have to focus on. This is something that we have to actively try to prepare ourselves for. And when you are loving yourself so much so that you're not letting these things from the past and the things that are going on right now destroy your future, that is exactly what it looks like. So when you accept yourself, a lot of this becomes a lot easier. It's not going to be as much of a stressor if you are, aware of what's happened, if you are aware and you're still choosing yourself over these people. And that's another thing, being able to choose yourself. I don't think we're doing that as much as we think. We might think, oh, well, I did this for me today, or no one, matters more than myself. But you think about it when you go into relationships, when you think about your connection with people, the many times that you kind of water down how you feel, or change how you feel, or don't say how you feel in these situations, or anything, friendships, relationships, whatever that thing may be, a lot of times we could see that we don't always pick ourselves. And I know a lot of people might say that it's selfish to always pick yourself, but I do feel like there's a real message in that. When it comes to, what we want, there's a way to be, effective in getting what we want, or saying how we feel without hurting other people, without being so selfish, or without taking it from other people. And I think if you are more able to, say how you feel without the feeling that other people might feel a certain way, or that, you might not be validated by this person, it still means something. It still has a lot to deal with you, a lot to deal with how you are feeling and what you want. And I think what I'm saying, choose yourself. That is the second part of it. You accept yourself and you choose yourself. You pick yourself over other people. You pick your desires, your things. It's your life at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people are so blinded by this. Oh, I really don't want to be selfish. But really, your needs, the things that you want in relationships, that's important to you. It doesn't have to be something validated by other people. It doesn't have to be something changed by another person. You might get in a relationship and learn that you don't need it, but saying, oh, well, if they don't want to do that for me, it's just whatever. I don't care. No, that is damaging yourself. That's not choosing yourself. And I think if we want to love ourselves, if we are trying to, pour so much love into ourselves and pour everything that we need to kind of feel more okay and more just with the things that are happening, it means choosing yourself. It means what I want is very important. It should be valued. It shouldn't need any, second review, or any critiquing. It's important to you for a reason. And if we want to kind of have that, not even in relationships, but in our own life, in our personal life, and the things that we want, that's something that we have to display. Before you even get into relationships, you could have this, or honestly should have this feeling of self-worth. If you're letting everyone in your past, dictate your value, I think that's the number one thing you have to break away from if you want to love yourself. If you say, well, I'm I'm lovable and I'm all these things, but this person didn't handle me right. This person, did things that hurt me. So that now means that I'm not that I'm unlovable. And you kind of have this mindset going into relationships, going into friendships, going into any future connections. It's only going to damage you. You have to let go of that. You have to let go of this feeling that you are unlovable, that people aren't, out there to value, because you get to determine your value. When you accept yourself and you choose yourself, you also value yourself. And when you're able to value yourself and pour, everything that you care about into what's important to you, this is what it means when you are going on these self dates or doing these things for yourself, or these little, gifts that you give yourself. That is also so very important, because when you are pouring so much effort and chasing these people, if you really think about it, where would you be if all that love you've been trying to give to that person or those people was given to you? Where would you be if you were able to receive that? And when I really think about it, and I feel like people watching this will think about it, they'll be like, wow, I'd be a completely different person. The same way I'd say, if you had a friend that talked about yourself the way you talk about yourself, would you want to be around them? And that's when you start to realize that how you represent yourself, how you talk to yourself, says a lot more than you think. This is now something that you're going to carry on with, because you have this idea that everyone will see you as that. Everyone will kind of see you as a projection. I think that's what the bigger fear is the bigger fear is that people will start to see you and how you see yourself. So if you start to see yourself with so much restoration, with this idea that you are capable of changing, that you are capable of achieving whatever that goal may be, that's the best thing you want. That is the thing you want. You have now accepted yourself, you've chose yourself, and you value yourself. That value is, like I said, it's something that you get to determine. There's no one that could say, well, I talked to them once, so they're worth about this much. No, you get to determine that, and you get to forever be evolving in that. Never having a prime is an example of that. If you never have a prime, you'll always be able to evolve. You'll always be able to learn. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, you know? Instead of having a prime always be in a state of constantly evolving, if you're able to constantly grow, if you're able to constantly, grow as a person and to mature, it only makes it easier for you to do better. It only makes it easier to form connections, to have these things, and to overall not be as easily damaged. If you're not allowing people to have, this much emotional pull on you anymore, good. That's what you need to have. A lot of people have this idea that they have to be dependent, or they have to, have their value determined by another person, when really you get to determine that. Your own projection says a lot about how you see yourself. And when you let people treat you a certain way, that is now how they're going to value you. If you treat yourself with so much respect, if you treat yourself with so much, love and empathy, while other people aren't, good. That means you can move on. That means you can do whatever it is that you need to feel better, whatever you need to be, confident in a relationship or by yourself. And now you're able to grow from it. Now you're able to change. Now you're able to do all these things. So if you are able to, and valuing yourself and choosing yourself and accepting yourself, it's only going to get better. It's only going to mean more, if you do want to love yourself. And that decision comes down to you. You shouldn't have to wait on a heartbreak. You shouldn't have to wait for someone to tell you to do these things or this video. Loving yourself is the most important thing you have to do. Because there is no one in the world. It's genuinely impossible for anyone to love you and to know you as much as you know yourself. The more you know something, the more you can love it, right? And if you don't know yourself, it's only going to get harder. So when you take the time to peel back all the layers, to use time to actively heal yourself, to see yourself for who you are, and being content and accepting these things and choosing yourself and valuing yourself, now loving yourself is the easiest of those things. Loving yourself is something that you can do without blinking an eye, because you are aware of what it requires. That choice is yours. That choice is what you need to have in order to feel better.